The stranger in the storms. The crash landing tore through Valoria's atmosphere like a wounded comet, leaving a trail of burning debris across the lavender sky. Dr. Cale Brennan gripped the controls of his research pod as it spiraled toward the planet's surface, alarms screaming in harmony with the howling wind outside. The impact sent him tumbling through crystalline formations that shattered like glass around him, each fragment singing a haunting note as it broke. When consciousness returned, Cale found himself lying in a cave that glowed with soft, pulsing light. His head throbbed, and his equipment was scattered across the smooth stone floor. Outside, a storm raged with an intensity he'd never witnessed, lightning that seemed alive, wind that carried voices in languages he couldn't understand. "You shouldn't be here," a gentle voice said from the shadows. Cale turned, wincing at the pain in his ribs, and saw her. She stood at the cave's entrance, silhouetted against the storm's electric purple glow. Her skin was the color of twilight, a deep purple that seemed to shift in the flickering light. Long dark hair fell around her shoulders, and her eyes held a sadness that made his chest tighten. "I didn't exactly plan the crash," Cale managed, attempting a smile despite his pain. "I'm Dr. Cale Brennan, xenobiologist." She stepped closer, moving with a grace that seemed almost liquid. Her clothing was unusual, layers of flowing fabric that wrapped around her body in a way that concealed more than it revealed. "I am Sina," she said softly. "You are injured. I can help, but—" She hesitated, her hands hovering near him, but not quite touching. "You must leave as soon as you're able. This planet, it's not safe for outsiders." Cale studied her face, noting the fear that flickered behind her kindness. "I need to repair my communication array first. My ship's beyond salvaging, but if I can reach my research station, they'll send a rescue team." Sina's expression darkened. "How long will that take?" "A few days, maybe a week, if I can find the right components." She closed her eyes, seeming to wrestle with some internal decision. When she opened them again, there was resignation there. "Then you'll stay in the outer gardens. There's shelter there, and the storms are less violent. But you must follow my rules exactly. Do you understand?" "What rules?" "Never venture toward the planet's core. Never touch the crimson flowers, and never—" She paused, wrapping her arms around herself as if suddenly cold. "Never ask to see what I keep hidden." The way she said it sent a shiver down Cale's spine that had nothing to do with his injuries. There was something desperate in her voice, something that spoke of secrets and sorrows older than he could imagine. "I promise," he said, though he couldn't help but feel he'd just agreed to something far more complicated than simple house rules. Sina nodded and extended her hand to help him up. When their fingers touched, Cale felt a strange warmth flow through him, and for just a moment, the pain in his body eased. She quickly pulled away, as if burned, and turned toward the cave's entrance. "Come, I'll show you to the gardens." As Cale followed her into the alien night, he couldn't shake the feeling that his crash landing on Valoria had been anything but an accident. The planet itself seemed to hum with anticipation, as if it had been waiting for him, waiting for something to change.
The Garden of Whispers. The gardens of Valoria defied everything Cale had learned in his years of xenobiology. Massive, crystalline trees grew in spirals toward the sky, their branches heavy with flowers that chimed softly in the breeze. Bioluminescent vines wove between ancient stone structures, pulsing with light that matched the rhythm of a heartbeat. At the center of it all stood a small dwelling, carved from a single massive geode, its interior walls sparkling with amethyst formations. "It's beautiful," Cale whispered, afraid that speaking too loudly might shatter the dreamlike quality of the place. Sina moved through the garden with practiced ease, her fingers brushing against leaves and petals as she passed. Each plant seemed to lean toward her touch, brightening momentarily before settling back into its gentle glow. "This is my purpose," she said quietly, "to tend what grows here, to keep the balance." Over the following days, Cale worked on salvaging equipment from his crashed pod while helping Sina maintain the gardens. She taught him which plants needed the mineral-rich water from the underground springs, which thrived on the planet's strange sunlight, and which bloomed only during the storms. In return, he told her stories of Earth, of oceans that stretched beyond the horizon, of cities that touched the clouds, of a world so different from Valoria that it might as well have been a fairy tale. "Tell me about rain," Sina asked one evening as they sat among the flowering vines. "Real rain, not the storms we have here." Kale smiled at the memory. "It's gentle usually, soft drops that fall from gray clouds. Children dance in it, lovers kiss in it. It smells like the earth waking up after a long sleep." Sina closed her eyes, as if trying to imagine it. "That sounds peaceful. Our storms are angry. They rage and tear and destroy." She opened her eyes, looking at him with an intensity that made his breath catch. "They're angry because of me." "What do you mean?" She stood abruptly, moving toward a cluster of silver flowers that had begun to wilt. "Nothing. Forget I said anything." But her hands trembled as she touched the dying blooms, and Kale saw that same strange glow begin to emanate from her palms. The flowers slowly lifted their heads, color returning to their petals. "Sina, what are you doing?" She pulled her hands back quickly, wrapping her arms around herself in that protective gesture he'd come to recognize. "Just gardening, that's all." But it wasn't all. Kale had seen the exhaustion that washed over her face, the way she swayed slightly on her feet. He moved closer, reaching out to steady her. "You're not just a gardener, are you?" For a moment, he thought she might tell him. Her lips parted, and in the dying light of Valoria's sunset, he saw something flash across her back, intricate patterns that glowed through the fabric of her robes, like constellations moving beneath her skin. Their eyes met, and in that instant, Kale felt something shift between them. Something deeper than friendship, more dangerous than curiosity. "Kale, She stepped back, her hand reaching behind her to pull her robes tighter. "I can't. You don't understand what it means." "Then help me understand." She shook her head, tears glistening in her eyes. "Some truths are too heavy to share. Some secrets protect more than just the one who keeps them." The ground beneath their feet trembled slightly, and in the distance, thunder rolled across the mountains. "I need to go. Stay here tonight. Don't follow me." "Sina, wait!" But she was already running toward the deeper caves, her purple form disappearing into the shadows like mist dissolving in sunlight. Kale stood alone in the garden as the trembling intensified, watching the plants around him dim as if responding to her absence. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept seeing those glowing patterns on her back, kept remembering the fear in her eyes. Whatever secret she carried, it was connected to this planet in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. And despite every logical instinct telling him to focus on his rescue and leave Valoria behind, Kale realized with startling clarity that he couldn't imagine leaving Sina. He was falling for her, this mysterious alien girl with sadness in her eyes and stars beneath her skin. And somehow, he knew that discovery would change everything.
The forbidden truth. 3 days passed before Sina returned to the gardens, and when she did, Kale barely recognized her. She moved like a ghost, her purple skin pale and drained of its usual luminescence. Her steps were unsteady, and she collapsed near the central fountain before she even noticed he was there. "Sina!" Kale ran to her side, catching her before she hit the ground. Her skin was cold to the touch, and her breathing came in shallow gasps. "What happened to you? Where have you been?" "The Eastern Grove," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "The corruption. It was spreading. I had to stop it." "You need medical attention. Let me examine you." "No." She tried to push him away, but she lacked the strength. "Don't. Please don't look. Promise me you won't look." But Kale was already scanning her for injuries, his medical training overriding her protests. Her pulse was erratic, her temperature dangerously low. He needed to check for wounds, needed to understand what was wrong. Carefully, gently, he began to shift the fabric covering her back. "Please," Sina begged, tears streaming down her face. "You mustn't see. If you see, everything changes. Please, Kale." His fingers froze at the desperation in her voice.
but he could feel heat radiating from her back, the kind of heat that suggested infection or worse. "Sina, I'm a doctor. Whatever it is, I've seen—" He lifted the fabric, and the words died in his throat. Her entire back was covered in living light. Intricate patterns swirled across her skin like galaxies in motion, each line pulsing with the same bioluminescent glow as Valoria's core. Constellations he recognized from the planet's star charts were mapped across her shoulder blades. Rivers of light flowed down her spine, and at the center of it all was a mark that looked like a dying star. Dark at its heart, but surrounded by desperate flickering illumination. "Oh gods!" Kale breathed. "Sina, what is this?" She sobbed, her whole body shaking. "I'm a keeper, born once every 1,000 years, bound to Valoria's core from the moment of my first breath. My life force and the planets are one." She turned her head to look at him, her eyes filled with anguish. "Every time I heal something, I draw power from the planet's heart. Every act of compassion I show weakens the Valoria. And every time the planet suffers because of me, the storms come, its way of crying out in pain." Kale sat back, his mind reeling. "That's why you were exiled, why you're alone here? My people discovered what I was when I was young. They celebrated it first. A keeper is supposed to be a blessing, someone who maintains balance by doing nothing. By simply existing, I stabilized the core. But I couldn't watch things die, Kale. I couldn't stand by while plants withered and creatures suffered. Every time I helped, I hurt my world." She laughed bitterly. "So they sent me here, to this remote garden, and told me to tend only what was necessary, to let nature take its course, to stop caring. But you couldn't." "No," she whispered. "The Eastern Grove was dying from a mineral imbalance. Hundreds of years of growth, thousands of creatures depending on it. I spent 3 days healing it, and with every moment, I felt Valoria screaming." She reached back, her hand finding his where it still rested near the mark. "Now you know. Now you understand why you have to leave. Why we can't—" She didn't finish the sentence, but Kale heard the unspoken words hanging between them. "Why we can't be close. Why we can't care for each other. Why this connection between us is impossible." He carefully lowered her robes back into place and moved around to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Sina, there has to be another way. Some kind of balance that doesn't require you to stop being who you are." "There isn't. The Galactic Council has been searching for keepers for decades. They want to harvest our power, use it to terraform dead worlds. If they find me—" She gripped his hands tighter. "The only thing protecting me is this planet's remoteness and my people's silence. But every storm draws attention. Every tremor is a signal that something unusual is happening here." Kale's scientific mind was already racing, thinking through possibilities, searching for solutions. But his heart was doing something else entirely. It was breaking for this beautiful, compassionate being who had been forced to choose between her nature and her world. "I'll never let them take you," he said firmly, "and I'm not leaving until we find an answer." "Kale!" He pulled her gently into his arms, feeling her relax against him despite her protests. "I mean it, Sina. You saved my life when you could have left me in that cave. You've shown me beauty I never imagined existed. And He took a breath, knowing that saying it would make it real, would make it matter. "I'm falling in love with you."
The storm of hearts. The confession hung in the air between them, like the bioluminescent pollen that drifted through Valoria's gardens at twilight. Sina pulled back slightly, searching Kale's face as if trying to determine whether he truly understood what he was saying. "You can't love me," she whispered, but her hand came up to touch his cheek, betraying her words. "Loving me means watching me destroy everything, or watching me fade away into nothing. There's no happy ending for a keeper, Kale. Then we'll write a new ending." He covered her hand with his, turning his face to kiss her palm. The gesture was simple,
but it sent a visible ripple through the mark on her back, the light pulsing brighter for just a moment. Over the following weeks, Cale threw himself into research with an intensity that bordered on obsession. He combed through every database he could access from his salvaged equipment, searching for any mention of keepers, of planetary bonds, of symbiotic life forces. Sina worked beside him, sharing what little her people had told her about her condition, teaching him to read the ancient texts carved into the garden's stone structures. They grew closer with each passing day. Cale learned that Sina loved the sound of wind chimes and had created an entire orchestra of them throughout the garden. She discovered that he hummed when he was concentrating, always the same melody his mother had sung to him as a child. They shared meals under the stars, their conversations stretched from sunset to sunrise, and slowly, carefully, they allowed themselves to hope. One evening, as Valoria's twin moons rose over the crystalline forests, Sina took Cale's hand and led him to a secluded grove where the flowers glowed silver and blue. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice trembling. "I've been healing again. Not large things, just small creatures, insects, a bird with a broken wing. I know I shouldn't, but, Cale, I can't help it. It's who I am." The admission should have frightened him, should have made him angry. Instead, Cale felt his heart swell with admiration for her courage, her compassion, her refusal to be anything other than herself, despite the cost. "I know," he said softly. "I've been monitoring the seismic activity. The tremors are getting stronger." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "The planet is dying because I can't stop caring. I'm killing my own world." Cale pulled her close, feeling her body shake with sobs against his chest. "No, Sina, your world is dying because the system is broken, because someone decided that compassion and preservation can't coexist. That's not natural law. That's just bad design." She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "What if there's no fix? What if this is just how it has to be?" Instead of answering with words, Cale kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, asking permission. But Sheena responded with a hunger that spoke of years of isolation, of loneliness, of denying herself connection because she believed she didn't deserve it. They sank into the soft moss together, surrounded by flowers that bloomed brighter in response to their emotions. "Show me," Cale whispered against her lips. "Show me all of you. Let me see the mark without fear." Sheena hesitated, then slowly turned, allowing him to carefully unwrap the layers of fabric she always wore. In the moonlight, the mark on her back was breathtaking, a living map of Valoria itself, showing every mountain range, every ocean, every forest. At its center, the dark star pulsed weakly, and Cale could see new cracks spreading through the constellation around it. "It's getting worse," she said quietly. "The core is fracturing." Cale traced the patterns with gentle fingers, feeling the warmth of her skin, the subtle vibration of the planet's heartbeat beneath. "You're so beautiful," he murmured. "This mark isn't a curse, Sina. It's proof of how deeply you're connected to everything around you. That's a gift." She turned back to face him, and in her eyes he saw the walls she'd built around herself finally beginning to crumble. They made love slowly, tenderly, as if they had all the time in the world instead of borrowed moments stolen from fate. Cale memorized every curve of her body, every sigh, every shiver. Sheena traced the scars on his chest from the crash, kissing each one as if she could heal them with her touch. Afterwards, they lay tangled together under the moons, and Sheena finally let herself believe, just for a moment, that maybe happiness was possible. But the universe had other plans. The next morning, Cale's salvaged communication array suddenly crackled to life. A voice cut through the static. "This is Council Ship Meridian. We received your distress beacon. ETA to your location, 48 hours. Prepare for extraction."
Sina sat up abruptly, her face draining of color. No, no, they can't come here. Kale was already at the console, his fingers flying over the controls. I never activated the beacon. It must have been damaged in the crash, sending out automatic signals. He looked at her, horror dawning in his eyes. Sina, if they've been tracking it, they'll have readings of all the seismic activity, all the energy signatures. They'll know what I am, she finished, her voice hollow. They'll know a keeper is here. The ground beneath them began to tremble, responding to Sina's fear. In the distance, storm clouds gathered with unnatural speed, and lightning painted the sky in shades of purple and white. Sheena grabbed Kale's hands, her grip desperate. You have to tell them I died. Tell them the planet is unstable, that it's not worth investigating. Make them leave. I'm not losing you, Kale said fiercely. There has to be another way. There isn't. She was crying now, the mark on her back glowing so brightly that it was visible through her robes. Don't let them take me, Kale. Promise me. If they come, if they try to take me, you'll... She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't ask him to do what she was thinking. But Kale understood. She was asking him to choose her death over her captivity, to love her enough to let her go. No, he said, pulling her into his arms as the storm raged around them. I'll find another way, I swear to you, Sina. But as the planet trembled and the council ship drew closer, Kale wondered if some promises were simply impossible to keep.
The choice between stars. Kale didn't sleep. While Sina rested fitfully in the geo-dwelling, he tore through the ancient texts with renewed desperation, his eyes burning from exhaustion and the strain of reading by bioluminescent light. There had to be something, some precedent, some forgotten solution, some way to save both Sina and Valoria. He found it, 3 hours before the council ship's arrival, carved into a stone tablet so old it had been half buried beneath centuries of moss. The text was nearly illegible, written in a dialect that predated modern Valorian, but Kale pieced it together word by painstaking word. In the time before exile, when keepers walked freely among their people, they were not alone. Each keeper bound themselves to a companion, one whose life force was strong enough to share the burden, to act as a bridge between the keeper's compassion and the planet's need. Two hearts beating as one, two souls sharing the weight of a world. Kale? Sina's voice came from the doorway. She looked fragile in the early morning light, her purple skin almost translucent with exhaustion. What did you find? He showed her the tablet, explaining his translation, watching hope and fear war across her beautiful face. It's dangerous, he said honestly. The ritual requires binding our life forces together. If it works, we become Valoria's guardians together. Your power channeled through both of us, distributed so neither the planet nor you bears the full weight. But if it fails, you could die, Sina finished. She shook her head violently. No, absolutely not. I won't risk your life, Kale. It's my life to risk. He took her hands, pulling her close. Sina, I've spent my whole life studying alien worlds, cataloging species, observing from a distance. I've never belonged anywhere, never found a place that felt like home, until I crashed here, until I met you. He touched her face gently. Let me do this. Let me be your companion. The council will be here in less than 3 hours. This is our only chance. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at him, this human who had stumbled into her life and refused to give up on her. Finally, she nodded. If we're doing this, we do it now. And Kale, she pulled him down for a kiss that tasted of salt and desperation and love. Thank you for seeing me, for all of me. The ritual required them to stand in the heart of the garden, where Valoria's energy was strongest. Sina removed her robes completely, letting Kale see the full extent of the mark that covered her back,
her sides, even trailing down her legs in delicate spirals. She was artwork come to life, a living testament to her world's beauty. Kale stripped to the waist, and Sina used a mixture of crushed minerals and bioluminescent sap to paint matching patterns on his chest, connecting his heart to hers through ancient symbols. Their hands joined, fingers interlacing, and they began to speak the words carved into the tablet. The effect was immediate and agonizing. Kale felt as if lightning was pouring through his veins, burning and freezing simultaneously. He could feel Valoria's core, sense its fractures and pain, understand the impossible burden Sina had carried alone for so long. The planet's anguish flooded through him, every storm, every tremor, every crack in its foundation. He wanted to scream, wanted to let go, but Sina's grip on his hands kept him anchored. "Stay with me," she gasped, her own body glowing so brightly she seemed made of starlight. "Don't let go, Kale. Please don't let go." He held on, pouring everything he was into the connection, his strength, his will, his love for her. Slowly, impossibly, he felt the burden begin to shift. The weight that had rested solely on Sina's shoulders spread between them, becoming bearable. The dark star at the center of her mark began to pulse with new light, and Kale felt corresponding warmth bloom in his own chest. When the light finally faded, they collapsed together onto the moss, gasping and trembling. Kale looked down and saw that his chest now bore a mark of its own, smaller than Sina's, but unmistakable, a constellation that mirrored hers, binding them together. "Did it work?" he whispered. Sina's hand found his, and when their fingers touched, Kale felt it, a connection deeper than anything he'd ever experienced. He could sense her emotions, feel her relief and joy and lingering fear. And through her, he could sense Valoria itself, no longer screaming in pain, but humming with cautious hope. "It worked," she breathed, wonder in her voice. "I can feel the planet stabilizing. The core is healing. Kale, you did it! We did it!" They had no time to celebrate. The roar of atmospheric entry shook the sky as the council ship descended toward the garden. Sina and Kale dressed quickly, standing together as the vessel landed in a clearing, its lights harsh and cold compared to Valoria's natural glow. Captain Theron emerged first, a tall figure in council armor, followed by a team of scientists with scanning equipment. His eyes fixed immediately on Sina, on the glow that even her robes couldn't completely hide. "Dr. Brennan," Theron said, his voice carrying the weight of authority, "we received your distress beacon and have been monitoring unusual seismic activity in this sector. Our scans indicate the presence of a keeper." His eyes never left Sina. "The Council requires all keepers to be registered and relocated to controlled facilities for the safety of developing worlds." "She's not going anywhere," Kale said, stepping in front of Sina. "The situation is under control. As you can see, the planet is stable." One of the scientists checked his equipment, frowning. "Captain, he's right. The energy readings have normalized. The core fractures are healing. This doesn't match the profile of an unstable keeper bond." Theron's eyes narrowed. "Explain." Kale opened his shirt, revealing the mark on his chest. "I'm her companion. We've completed the ancient bonding ritual. The burden is shared now, distributed between both of us and the planet. Valoria is no longer at risk, and neither is Sina. She stays here with me as a guardian rather than a prisoner." The captain studied them both for a long moment, and Kale could see him weighing options, considering protocols. Finally, he spoke. "The Council will want reports, regular monitoring, proof that this arrangement remains stable." "You'll have it," Kale promised. "Every month, complete data on the planet's core stability, seismic activity, everything you need, but Sina remains free. That's non-negotiable. Another long pause. Then Theron nodded. Very well, but Dr. Brennan, understand that you've bound yourself to this world now. You can never leave. Is that truly what you want? Cale looked at Sina, at her beautiful face, still wet with tears, at the hope shining in her eyes. He felt their connection pulse with warmth, felt Valoria's gratitude flowing through both of them. He thought of his old life, of sterile research stations and distant observations, and knew with absolute certainty that he'd found something infinitely more valuable. Yes, he said simply, this is exactly what I want. The council ship departed an hour later, leaving Cale and Sina alone in their garden as Valoria's twin moons rose overhead. They stood together, hands joined, feeling the steady rhythm of the planet's healed core beating in time with their own hearts. Thank you, she whispered, leaning her head against his shoulder, for seeing me, for not giving up, for choosing me. Cale kissed the top of her head, breathing in the sweet scent of her hair, of the flowers around them, of this alien world that had become his home. You told me not to let them take you, he said softly. That was one promise I was always going to keep. As they walked back to the geode dwelling together, the garden bloomed brighter around them, and for the first time in 1,000 years, a keeper could heal without fear. The storms had passed, replaced by gentle rain that Sina had only dreamed of, soft drops that fell from gray clouds while she and Cale danced beneath them, laughing and alive. Two souls bound together under alien stars, sharing a burden that had once been unbearable, now transformed into something beautiful. A love that defied galaxies, hidden no longer beneath the weight of secrets, but shining freely in the light of two worlds made whole.